Welcome to the Aim for Success podcast. I'm Joni Knighty, a licensed psychotherapist and certified clinical hypnotist and trainer. I'm also the founder of Aim for Success and Joni Knighty Hypnosis. I've been practicing for over 27 years, and I'm excited about sharing my experiences and those of my guests. Be sure and check out my websites, aim-for-success.com and joniknightyhypnosis.com to learn more about my services and products. I also invite you to check out my store, aim-store.net. As a gift to you for listening to this podcast, use the code SUCCESS to receive 25% off your first self-hypnosis audio purchase. You are listening to episode 9 of the Aim for Success podcast featuring Greg Mosely. Greg has been involved with sports since the age of 9. He received a football scholarship to play for Liberty University as their starting quarterback based on outstanding performances at Ed White High School in Jacksonville, Florida. Greg completed his 4 years quite successfully at Liberty and went on to coach a variety of sports, as well as serving as an athletic director. He is currently the head coach for North Greenville University's women's volleyball team. Greg also coaches at Upstate Volleyball Club in South Carolina, along with his daughter, Amber Wiles, who's been involved with volleyball for 30 years. Listen as we discuss Greg's journey in the area of sports, as well as his optimism and willingness to incorporate mental strategies to prepare his athletes not only for their sport, but for their lives. Hello, everyone. Today I have with me on my podcast, Greg Mosely. Greg has been involved all of his life in sports since the age of 9. Greg, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you on here today.
Thank you, Joni. It's great to be with you.
So you've been involved, as I said in the introduction, in sports almost all of your life.
Correct.
So, and your journey starting so young has led you to all of these roles. And I want the viewers to hear exactly what those roles have been and what those roles are currently. So would you mind taking us through a timeline of your experience?
I'm glad to. Well, as you stated, at age 9, I began with Little League Baseball. What you see on TV now, on ESPN, it was that. It spanned all the way back there. And that was in Milton, Florida, right outside of Pensacola. The next year, I started my first year of football. Had a knack for it and excelled at it. Early on, my parents told me, we were a military family, didn't have a whole lot of money, but had what we needed. But they told me, if you want to go to college, you're going to need to plan on a scholarship. So I started learning to set goals at a very young age, and had a great career through high school, and was able to achieve that goal of a scholarship, pay for my education as I went to Liberty University. And from there, really just began to develop a passion for working with young people, and had the opportunity to do so through sport. And at a young age, was able to move right into a small private Christian school in the Eastern North Carolina area as an athletic director. Coached many sports, and that led me to Raleigh, and then from Raleigh to Greenville, South Carolina, which I've been here the last 22 years, and was fortunate enough to be able to transition from the high school arena to coaching collegiately. And I've done that for the last 10 years. Actually, this January, I'll begin my 11th year coaching at the college level. And it has afforded many opportunities. Also, with my daughter, operate a club volleyball organization. We have about 100 to 125 young ladies in our club, ranging from developmental 10 to 11, 12-year-olds to 18-year-olds with travel teams that compete. And so I do that alongside of coaching in college with her. And so, from a player perspective, coaching many different sports, to now singly coaching one sport in the sport of volleyball, make a living around a ball, and really enjoy being able to interact with both athletes and parents doing that.
So you have got a very broad perspective when it comes to athletics, not only coaching, but having played, having been a parent, and now being able to work with her in, her coaching role. Let's rewind just a tiny bit. One of the things that I heard was about your goals, that you set goals very early on. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting because that doesn't always happen now, that young people have that big why. Okay. And that's, really what's behind any goals, I think, that we set. We need to know why are we doing this? It makes it easier to set the goals, and it makes the goals a lot more clear and easy to understand and follow. So you had that big why of you wanted to go to college. It was a non-option option in a way, right?
Exactly.
Is that part of where your drive began?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
Just sport in general, if you want to excel at it, and you've got that in you, you want to excel to be the best. Mm-hmm. And that just was in me. I was a little bit of an introvert as a young athlete, but on the field, I was able to flip that switch and just excel in a different way. And, if there was a record or an award or something along that line, I wouldn't tell anyone about it, but it just became my motivation. If there was an award at the end of the season or the end of a particular game or something like that, that was going to be offered, I set the goal to get that award. So I had short-term type of goals, and I couldn't have articulated those things at that time that way. It's just something that I saw and I went after it. And when I got into high school, same thing. At the high school where I went at the time in Jacksonville, Florida, Ed White, it was only 3 grades, 10th, 11th, 12th grade. Didn't have freshmen. Freshmen were with the junior high school at a different location. They'd never been a sophomore to start. And so I set a goal to do that as a quarterback. And of course, there were several of us that were in the same class that were sophomores that started for that program. And it was a great class. And there were other things that as far as making all region and all city, and later on as a senior, having the opportunities that I had in awards of Offensive Players of the Year and leading the city in different categories and things along those lines that I set as personal goals to try to achieve, and I achieved them. And it just sort of became a habit of things I wanted to do. And then I carried that over, into my college playing career. Started as a freshman, started all 4 years, set goals, even going into my senior year. When I knew my collegiate career was coming to an end, I was confident that it was. I had run that course, and I was ready to transition to other phases of life. But I achieved some goals of records that were there at that university that I achieved. They've since been broken, which that's what records are for, to be broken. And then also as far as national recognition too, that I was able to achieve. So I'm very grateful that I had the health and the ability, to be able to do that. And then as I transitioned into coaching, it kind of did the same thing. Building programs has sort of been what my MO has been wherever I've gone, whether it be individual teams or whether it be overall programs as an athletic department, as an athletic director. And I've tried to continue that even at this stage of my life, and want to continue that, throughout my life.
I was listening to how modest you are, and I understand that about you as a person and a friend. I like that the goals and the awards were important to you at an intrinsic level. So you were intrinsically motivated. A lot of people, and this is okay. I have a lot of athletes that are extrinsically motivated. They want the recognition. They feel that they need the recognition to be confident. And we know, in fact, that it's quite the opposite. That if we develop that confidence, that motivation, those routines, and that winning attitude intrinsically, the confidence comes because you become successful and the goals are reached. But having said that, just a fun tidbit, there were a lot of articles about you back in the 70s, 80s, right? Which was kind of rare that at the time that they would write about one person so often, and they called you Mr. Everything. And maybe you can go on to explain where that came from.
Well, first of all, I want to say that you can't control what the media does a lot of times. They're looking for headlines and things along that line. And
Yes.
I'm fortunate enough to be blessed with talent where I play quarterback. I kicked field goals, extra points. I punted. I ran the ball and had success at each of those areas and skills. But my parents instilled in me at a very young age that I was going to be appreciative and humble and a team player and not draw unnecessary attention to myself. So I grew up really just downplayed that. And actually, when those types of titles would come up, initially it was flattering and like, wow. And then I'd be thinking, how's this going to affect that? I don't want that to be a negative, because ultimately I believe that for us to be successful, it was a team thing. I always was that kind of player.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how it kind of came about is that I did a lot of things and had fortunate enough to be talented in a lot of areas. And I worked on those areas and wanted to help my team any way I could, and have tried to instill that into other players that I've coached. Best thing I believe about is their humbleness in the fact that they have a tremendous talent, but yet they recognize where it comes from. They recognize that it's not just about them. Or my daughter, her mother and I instilled in her, and she received many awards. She was State Player of the Year in South Carolina as a volleyball player, All-State, an All-Star, selected All-Star team, Conference Player of the Year, State Champion. And she always, would downplay. So I would hope that perhaps maybe I was able to rub some off onto her a little bit as an athlete. Those are the things that excite me about working with young people, both at the club level and at the university level, is to help them understand that. And I tell and remind my team, I have 21 young ladies on my team at the university where I coach at, and that this is a privilege that they have. They are one of 21 that get to play this sport. And they all were the best. I've asked them questions at times about how many of those that graduated with you are playing college. Most of them, I'm the only one. And then some of them I'll say, well, there were two. They would tell me there were two. How many are still playing? I'm the only one that's still playing. And so there's something that sport has to offer and provide and give to an athlete that is beyond the game, that is beyond just the X's and the O's, that is beyond stats, that is beyond championships. And while you set those things as goals, which certainly we do, we've got a goal to win a conference championship against the NCAA bid. That is a goal of ours. But ultimately, I try to tell them that, hey, don't compare yourself with anyone else. Don't compare yourself with another team. Only compare yourself to being the best you that you can be. And let's work to that end. And I told them this morning, as we had a 5:45 practice this morning, a.m., that no matter what, when we go out now, as we're approaching the conference tournament, your best, guys, your best. That's what we want. And we go out, we do our best. Hey, if we happen to lose doing our best, yeah, it's going to sting, but at least we know that we've achieved the goal that we're after and that somebody has beat us and that we've not beat ourselves. So, there's so much that athletics can afford to share and grow and develop in young people's lives. And that's why I do what I do.
I heard of a couple of things that I'd like to highlight, and that was going all the way back. You've always been grateful for opportunities and your talent. And I do believe we do have a responsibility to use our talents. And sometimes the direction of those talents change, but we still keep the core of what we were given and what we begin to notice and become aware of as actually being our talents, because not everyone identifies their talents right away. You can ask young people and even older adults, and they say, well, I don't really have any talents. That's something I hear very often. And initially I feel a little sad because they've gone so long, or they're in that moment where they don't understand that they do have talent within them. But we know that with some work, we can help people identify that and learn to expand and grow the way that you and I both have in our lives and our careers. And also I heard the importance of parents, role models, and mentors. Your parents, you and your daughter's mother, being very supportive and just doing a really great job with her. I've met your daughter and she's lovely. She's also very talented, and I can see where she's going to continue to be just an amazing influence, just as you have on young people. And that's a great legacy, isn't it?
Very much so. She's a
Yeah.
great coach.
Now, so you and your daughter, do you all run camps, or how can, if someone doesn't have the luxury of being on one of your teams, but they just want to be able to learn technical skills or the mental side, you include the mental side of the sport, the technical side, and the physical side, which I appreciate, that triangle that we'll get to in just a moment. What do you offer?
Well, obviously we talked about the club, and we train, and I have my coaching tree expands. Most of the kids that are in our club have played for me or coached with me for a number of years. And so in training them, the method that I've used for the number of years that I've coached now, and then also philosophically and how we approach them within our club and trying to impact those young people in the areas you mentioned, and we try to impact them in a positive way spiritually as well, and encourage them there. But we do training on certain days where anybody, that's even people that are not involved with our club, can come in and find out, what we do. And there's several people that play in other clubs, and they come because they like the way I train, and they like the way that the techniques that we use. And then I do summer camps where I do site camps and go to actually the high school or middle school. And I talk with the coach and discuss what they are looking for and what they're wanting to work on. I may come in and do a 2-day, 3-day, or 4-day camp, 4 hours to 6 hours, depending upon the number of days that we do it. And we work that out. But so I do travel site camps as well. And it puts them in their home environment and allows me to be able to really give them individualized attention as far as those players. And we had great camps this past summer in doing that. And so, and then we do some individual training. I'm not allowed per NCAA rules to train individually. I can do clinics and group clinics, but Amber does a lot of individual training, and some of our coaches do as well, one-on-one. So we offer that as well. But, and then, I'm hoping, as you're saying, maybe this is a segue into the mental side of things, that the knowledge that is increasing and gaining from the mental side of approaching sport is going to be something that's going to develop, that I can encourage other coaches, both at the club, college, high school level, of approaching certain techniques that you and I have discussed, and the things that are in the book, that we've collaborated on to develop for.
Would you mind showing that book?
I will. It is
and as you're holding that up, I'd just like to say that, and I don't know that we've talked about that a lot during this podcast or at all, but I have worked with your teams and had the opportunity. I appreciate that. I appreciate you valuing what I do, and that really important mental side of the sport, where, when you're in practice, all that physical and technical work is so important, and a certain amount of it when you get to competition, but most of what happens at competition is mental. And so when that's left to chance, which happens so often, it's not a great situation for the athlete.
Right.
Especially athletes that just don't intuitively have those skills, or someone, haven't had the opportunity to have someone teach them. So I'm excited to see this. I work with teams all over the country, individuals, and I know you're aware of that. I'm really enjoying spreading these messages to coaches, athletes, and parents. Thank you so much for all that you contributed to that guide. It's going to help a lot of people, and I look forward to reaching, a bigger audience with that, so that athletes have access to what we've put together, because I couldn't have done it without you. I certainly needed all of that information and the feedback that was provided from your athletes as well.
Especially with my team over the last 2 seasons, developed this side of the mental game. I looked and evaluated and said, we're doing a really, really good job physically. My girls train hard. They train hard in the weight room. We have great strength coaches at North Greenville University. We're doing a good job technically. We're teaching them how to play, fundamental skills, the things that we need to do. And then I've kind of added one in there. We're doing the job strategically as coaches and preparing them for matches as far as what they can expect, how they need to go and approach and attacking a team through the sport of volleyball to be successful. And then I looked and I found that the greatest room for improvement was in the mental side. And so I started, thinking back in my own life about that part of it and how that played such an important part when I had no clue what to call it.
You put together something for yourself, basically.
Well, I had all this energy, and this anxiousness before game, and it was just like overwhelming, and I said, I've got to do something with this. What am I going to do? So just through natural instinct, I would go in and develop this routine about what I wanted to do. And I'd put certain portions of my gear on, and before we ever boarded the bus or went to the field house, and I got in and found a place in our gymnasium at Ed White where the I-beams came down. There were support beams, and my head would fit right between the I-beam and the block wall, center block wall, perfect. And it sounded like an ocean, and it kind of blocked out everything else that was going on. It was dark in there, and very little light. I just started, you could call it whatever you want to call it, but I was meditating. I just shut my eyes and I started playing everything that I had to do out in my mind perfectly. That's the only way I could do it. I did not see myself fumbling. I did not see myself throwing an interception. I saw myself breaking tackles, throwing touchdowns, making the proper reads on handoffs, all the things that I had to do, kicking extra points straight through the uprights, field goals, the winning, throw for a touchdown. It just happened. And then we would go in our field house. The band would come off the bus. The tri-toms would strike up, and they'd start that cadence marching in, and it was on. And that was my routine. That carried into college. And I had a coach that shared with me the term psycho-cybernetics. I'm going, what? Mental imaging. That carried over into coaching, where I got a hold of a book where Michael Jordan, it was called For the Love of the Game, and it talked about how before every game, he would break down his opponent in his mind and play the entire game out in his mind. I said, well, there's something to this. And that led me all the way up, to make a long story short, to where you and I began to converse about this. And all of a sudden I'm finding through your guides in other sports and your techniques, bilateral stimulation. We talked about convincers and with the buckets and balloons and the magnetic fingers and the aspects of suggestion and cognitive distortions and tools in a toolbox to be able to deal with those, and suggestions and affirmations. And so I started using these things both with my campers, my club members, as you came up, and used them also with my team and teams. And I am now including it in some of my recruiting talks where I show them and talk to them about what we're doing on the mental side. I may go with a recruit and have them to do the magnetic fingers or the buckets and balloons. And I talked to them about, I said, do you think that's kind of like something weird? I go, yeah, that's weird. But really what it is how closely that the mind is connected to the body, and
that's
how
right.
open you are to suggestions. And I said, and what is coaching? Coaching is nothing more than making suggestions. And so once you break it down that way, you see how this type of technique, the things that you're doing and you're promoting and you're bringing to athletes and teams and coaches, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. And so I look at it as an eventual edge for our team and teams. I see it as an opportunity to be able to close that gap between the mental side of our performance and how we can get our bodies and our minds connected together to perform the technique using that back part of the brain, getting in that instinctive part of the brain rather than being in their heads in the front part of the brain right there, and they're thinking too much.
I so appreciate you saying those things, because I think other coaches are going to benefit from that once they see this, progression of success that you're going to have by adding all of this. Let me say that most of the coaches that I've met have always had great intentions when they talk to their athletes. It's just sometimes they are actually making suggestions that aren't helping, they're hurting without knowing it. and I've seen that for a variety of reasons. And coaches have been really honest with me, and we've had candid conversations. That's how I've learned to be better at what I do. And what I hear sometimes is they don't know what to say or when to say it. They don't know when something's helpful and when it's hurtful. And so there's a lot to learn in that area. And it's just a pleasure to be able to help teach that, because when an athlete comes up to a coach for feedback, they're wide open to suggestion, because they're looking and they're nodding their head. Yes, they're nodding their head for information, right? You've seen this when you talk to your athletes. And so what you say does become a direct suggestion, because a coaching role is very powerful. And so it's a great opportunity to do things right, to do them well, and to really enhance the lives of those athletes standing in front of you. And so I get really, really excited about it. And I think that once coaches and people learn that we can't solve all problems, and, with our front brain, with that conscious part of the mind, because of that overthinking that goes on, and because of that filter that we know exists between what we hear and the part of the brain where it actually becomes the habit that we want it to become, the good habit. And so once we, learn how to deal with that, everything works out very well. And, habit is something that you mentioned very, very early on in the podcast. You said, you develop habits, and that's what we want. We want to help young people. Well, we want to help all people develop habits and get more of what they want, and make that something that's just routine, just, what they do automatically, and less of what they don't want, and just go back in there and change some of those old habits that aren't working for them.
Well, the habit part is, I think, connected also to your comments about, coaches and the suggestions that we make, because I've been there as a coach. I'm still growing, making sure that the things that I'm speaking to my players are those suggestions that help them to grow and mature. I think it's something that every coach probably goes through at some point in time or another, where they have to work on those areas.
Yes.
And you share a story with you before about, my philosophy as far as learning, and how, as a young coach in the early 90s, Joe Segula, who's the head coach at UNC Chapel Hill women's volleyball, Hall of Famer, Olympic level development coach. I was there, had one player that was in his camp. He came over as I was up against the wall. He's probably wondering, what's this guy doing in my gym here, And so he's got hundreds of campers out there, and he comes in, introduces himself. And he said, "You got a daughter here?" I said, "No, I have a player here." And he said, "Where do you coach?" And we talked a little bit. He said, "Hang on a minute." About 5 minutes later, he came back, and I still have it in my files. And he gave me everything that he taught his college team, as well as what he was going over with his campers. And he said, "Coach, if this helps you, that's great. If you ever got any questions, anything ever better be of help to you, you let me know." Well, as I processed that, I thought one day he didn't have to do that. Here is an Olympic level Division I coach who is taking time to share with his coach at this little private school in Raleigh. And so I learned from that number one, I didn't know it all. I don't know it all. Number two, there are people that know more than I do. 3, get around them. And 4, give it back. The process of giving back completes that cycle. And you want to make sure that you understand that learning never stops for you professionally as a coach. And
Right.
So at my age, at 59, I'll give it away. I want to make sure that I'm being my best for my players. And if I need to change things, and over the last 3 years, I've changed a lot in my coaching. Guess what? Next 3 years, I'm going to continue to change, because I want to continually be the best as a coach, in the same light, same vein that I wanted to be the best as a player. And so that means how I suggest to them, the things that I give them, the things that I'm trying to help them on in this mental side of sport, that they can achieve the highest level of competition that they possibly can, and then in turn be able to achieve the highest level of life and living life and quality of life and blessed life that they possibly can as well. And hey, as coaches, if we can impact our players a little bit in that way, what a great thing to be able to say. And what a great thing. And I've coached enough now where I've had players to come back, thank me for this, thank me for that. Coach, those little sayings that you said at this time, I use them now when I talk to my teams. And I tear up. I mean, because it's just, that is just a special thing to know that you've had that kind of impact on somebody's life. But you want to have it beyond just the stats, the scores, the wins, the losses, the trophies won, because those things are forgotten. But how you influence someone that they're able to carry those things in life. That's what my high school coach did for me.
Well, and I think, those thank yous that you're receiving demonstrate that you've done a lot right. But the most important thing is these are powerful suggestions that you've implanted at some point into these, young athletes and the minds of young people. And the great news is that they stick, and they're coming back to thank you for that.
And they become tools.
That's when they've arrived, and when they come back and thank you for it, even better. Just to make sure I'm accurate on this, and also just to bring it up, I'm looking at some of the sports that you mentioned that you coached: JV football, baseball, fast pitch softball, soccer, men's and women's basketball. I'm pretty sure you were struggling to even remember all that you've done because you've done so much.
Well, as an athletic director, you have the opportunity I was always the type of leader that I wanted things to be done the best they could be.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times I found the best thing to do was to take a young coach who was motivated, walk alongside them, teach them about various things where they may have had great knowledge, particularly in the skill session or skill areas, but didn't have great knowledge as far as how to handle kids yet and how to run a team, and then teach them for a year or two, and then turn the program over to them. And so through that, like I said, I'm a keen observer. So if I'm watching someone in a particular skill, a particular sport, and they're teaching perhaps the techniques for a fast pitch pitcher, I'm watching it and I'm seeing it and I'm learning it. And I was always a pretty quick student with those types of things. Also had an ability to pick up various sports athletically. And so it's afforded me to be able to go in, and having even not played some of those sports, and coach them to a level that I could take them to, and then would find a coach to come in and take it to another level. And that's just there's a book that impacted me by Collins. It's called Good to Great. And it kind of takes the premise of where we have sacrificed great on the altar of good. And I bring this up to my girls all the time. What does it mean to be great? What does it mean to be great? And I've heard you even say that, you're a great coach. You're a great player. And it's the thing that I try to tell my team. I've told them, I said, you are a great team. But in this book, it talks about the necessity, as far as a level 5 leader, to be able to develop people around you that are capable of doing and taking what you can do at this level, but because they're focusing on that one thing, they are able to take it to a broader and greater level. And so in an organizational structure, that is something that I think is imperative. And what I've tried to do, and anytime I've been either a director or administrator, is find out those key people who had talents and gifts, walk alongside of them, teach them my philosophy, and then turn them loose with it so the organization as a whole could be even greater. So these individuals and I got many, I'm blessed with many success stories of where I've helped these coaches have come and assisted me, and we took it to a certain level where I could, but I'm running the entire athletic department, turn them loose, and they go win region championships. They get in state playoffs. And they just take the program farther than I could because of the other things that I had responsibilities of. And so I just sort of took that philosophy from that book and tried to be a leader that developed talent and encouraged others, and then deflected the praise and deflected the success onto the team element of coaches, rather than it just being just about me, because it's never that way. It's never just about me or one person. And it's always, if anything is successful, it takes everybody contributing what their gifts, their abilities, their talents to make that happen.
Well, I appreciate that. I also appreciate you making that point that it is important not only to tell yourself every day and to believe that you're great at what you do, but to do those things that back that up. But my understanding and the thing that I know is that if we do that with conviction, those behaviors that make us better and create that growth will show up and get better and better. And I've seen that in my own life, and I know you have too. So, every day I say I'm great at what I do. Do I want to be greater? Absolutely. But just that, having that deep understanding that I'm great at what I do because my intention is to be great and to serve. And that's what I heard in your message, is that it's not just about us. It's about communicating that message, and also serving other people.
Be great and be grateful.
Yes.
They go well together.
Yeah. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this podcast and for sharing so much of what you do and what you're planning on doing. And I'm excited about sharing with people how, what we're doing together and some of the fun things we've done with the team. Maybe we can get your team to do more. I love their videos when they actually talk about what it is they've learned, and I think mainly because you can see that great energy, and that making changes can be fun. It is fun. What we're doing on the mental side is fun. We're not lecturing. I mean, there may be a tiny bit of that, but we're really doing it using the subconscious part of the mind, which is just where the imagination lives, just where the habits live. And we're using that for their advantage and their success.
Yes, indeed.
And so fun, that word fun, I'm preaching that word all the time now. Yeah.
Thank you for what you've contributed to my teams, and just excited about continuing to learn, very much so, as you stated. And that's the goal. That's the goal.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to more of it. All right. Well, thank you so much.